So this happened as recently as 2022 in my neighbouring suburb. So in the early hours of the morning on December 4th, 2022 at about 5 AM, the body of a woman was spotted floating in the water around the groin of Capo d'Orlando Drive in Fremantle, Western Australia. This area is by no means secluded either. It's a busy, popular tourist destination. It's near the Fremantle Sailing Club. There are charter boat companies, restaurants, brewery, parking lots and recreational fishermen always in the area, and probably the most historic part of the state. Authorities quickly identified the woman as mother of one, 25-year-old Helen Solomon Marsick, and spent the next few days turning over every stone in the hopes of piecing together what had happened. Using CCTV footage to retrace her steps, authorities saw Helen at the Oat Street train station stop in Carlisle, about 20 minutes from Fremantle in Perth South on November 30th, and then a few days later, police announced that 21-year-old Mohammed Misra had been arrested in relation to Helen's murder. He was charged with interfering with the corpse, willful destruction of evidence, specifically getting rid of his clothes and the murder weapon, which was a knife, and Helen's phone. There's not a whole lot about how Mohammed knew Helen, assuming that they were dating or somehow involved, but according to the facts of this case, it's believed that Helen was killed in Mohammed's home in the Perth suburb of Gosnells, and then her body was dumped in the Fremantle Harbour. On June 27, 1986, mother of two, Barbara Weston, was reported missing by family when she didn't return home after a night out. She lived in St James, which is in Perth South, with a de facto partner and two children. So the night before, on the 26th, Barbara left home at about 6 PM and went to the Balmoral Hotel pub in neighbouring East Victoria Park. So two of her friends confirmed seeing her at the Balmoral at about 8 PM. Where things get a bit murky is she was also seen at another venue by other personal friends at a neighbouring place. So between 8 and 11 PM, Barbara was apparently at an Irene's Park Tavern, now known as Franklin's Tavern, a couple of buildings down the road from the Balmoral, and then she was seen leaving this venue at around 11:30 PM. This was the last time Barbara was seen alive. And then on March 14th, 1991, Barbara was finally found, confirming everyone's worst fears. Barbara's skeletal remains were found by two people in Carragullen in the Canning Dam vicinity next to Armidale, which is about 30 minutes south of St James. Among the remains were some of her personal items, including clothing and jewellery. During the time when Barbara disappeared, two serial killers were active in Perth. Their names were David and Catherine Burney. They were responsible for murdering 4 women at their home in the Perth suburb of Willagee, known to locals as the Morehouse murders. They buried 3 of their 4 confirmed victims' bodies in a forest in Gleneagle, about 10 minutes south of Carragullen. Leaving jewellery and other personal items beside the deceased's body was one of their trademarks. They were thankfully caught in November of the same year, after their final victim managed to escape their home and seek help. This, along with the placement of Barbara's body, has led many to suspect that she was a victim of the Burneys, although this has never been confirmed and the case still remains open. In late August of 2018, 37-year-old accountant Ahmed Seedat had hired a contractor to dig a hole in his backyard at his home in Carlisle in Perth South, where he lived with his 32-year-old wife Fahima Yusuf and 2 young sons. He organised a contractor to dig the hole for a small swimming pool, which he was getting installed for the kids. But right after the hole was dug, Fahima disappeared. When Fahima's family hadn't heard from her, Alma had told them that she had left the country without any warning, leaving him alone with the kids. Meanwhile, he was telling friends and neighbours that she'd gone to the UK for eye surgery. Fahima's dad, who lives in the eastern states, didn't believe him, and he and his daughters were close. So Ahmed tried to trick him into thinking Fahima was okay in one of the most ridiculous ways possible, by getting a friend to impersonate a police officer and phoning his father-in-law to say that they were in contact with Fahima and she was okay. Because Fahima had unexpectedly left, Ahmed didn't say anything about their lack of mother's presence around the home to the kids. But Fahima's dad wasn't convinced, and after 4 days of not hearing from his daughter, he reported his concerns about Fahima's welfare to police. Police investigated Fahima's disappearance, and Ahmed eventually opened up to the police about what had happened to her. He told them that he struck Fahima with a tying iron on August 31st while she slept in their marital bed, causing her to wake up in a vulnerable state. He then continued to attack her, repeatedly striking her and finally suffocating her. Out of panic, he concealed her passing. Both kids were fast asleep and had no idea this was happening. Ahmed told police that Fahima was buried in the backyard. So police searched the family home and recovered Fahima. When she was examined by the coroner, they saw that she had been violently attacked multiple times with lacerations to her head and body. The exact cause of death couldn't be confirmed because sand was also in her mouth. In a conflicting statement later, Ahmed told authorities that the reason he took Fahima's life was because Fahima had been becoming increasingly abusive towards him during their marriage, making sexual demands of him, and on the night in question, she'd become quite irrational, unreasonable, and acting sexually aggressive toward him. She then started to attack Ahmed, and in retaliation, he defended himself but admitted he took it too far. Authorities later determined that in the weeks before Fahima's passing, Ahmed made some disturbing Google searches. They included the terms, how to cremate a body, how much vodka to drink to pass out, how to bury a cat, what's the best place to knock someone out, and can you marry your brother-in-law if sister's dead, Muslim. This led them to conclude that Ahmed had been planning to end Fahima's life for some time. They then saw messages he had been sending to Fahima's sister saying that he wanted to be with her. So when Fahima's sister was interviewed by police, she stated that she was unaware of any romantic feelings he had towards her and only saw him as a brother and a friend. Ahmed was sentenced to life and is currently serving at Bunbury Correctional Facility. The kids were relocated to live with Fahima's parents interstate. But the story doesn't end here. The thing was, Ahmed had a massive gambling problem. He blew through something like $3 million of his own and Fahima's money, and he defrauded his clients, the elderly, and even his own father out of something like $5.7 million by gambling it all away. He was able to use his role as a qualified accountant and tricked his clients by using forged trust fund documents and false portfolio evaluations to defraud them between 2013 and 2018. So by 2020, Ahmed was found guilty of fraud and was sentenced to 10 years, but he would be serving the term side by side with his life sentence. Ahmed is dishonest, having betrayed the trust of many people, including his own family, and his accounts of events can't be trusted. Ahmed had been unfaithful to Fahima, sleeping around with escorts for a number of years prior to his wife's passing, and experts claim that he possesses narcissistic traits, deluding himself that people would believe his lies and that he would get away with defrauding people and, most importantly, depriving his children of their mother. And that delusion led him to believe that he could disappear Fahima and get together with his sister-in-law. But we can only take Fahima's sister at her word that she didn't see Ahmed more than a brother and a friend. But it should be noted that authorities did see enough evidence on Ahmed's phones to question Fahima's sister, leading many to theorise that she either wanted to be with him too, but had 180'd after seeing what he was capable of, or had a part, either indirectly or directly, in Fahima's disappearance. On June 14th, 2016, in Rockingham, in Perth South, 18-year-old Aaron Pagich was reported missing by his landlady, Adrienne Reed. Aaron had Asperger's and was known to be very trusting in nature. Adrienne knew something was very wrong when Aaron didn't respond to her calls or texts. So Aaron rented a room in Adrienne's house since 2016. They met through church and Adrienne gave Aaron a place to stay for a considerable discount, as well as driving him around town when he needed it. Aaron attended vocational school, where he became friends with a 14-year-old fellow student, and the two bonded over their shared passion of gaming. Aaron had met the student's parent, Trudy Lennon, and had become quite well known to her. So on June 13th, Adrienne recalls Aaron receiving a call from Trudy in the morning as they had breakfast to invite him over to meet up with her son. Aaron was pretty keen to go, so Adrienne offered to drop Aaron off at a shopping centre where he would meet up with Trudy and the son and go back to their place to hang out. So when Adrienne dropped him off, two women greeted him. They turned out to be 44-year-old Trudy Lennon, the son's mum, and her friend, Gemma Lilly, 26-year-old British expat. They drove Aaron back to their house, and as soon as he entered the back door, Gemma jumped on Aaron and tried to strangle him with some wire. Keep in mind, Aaron had a small build, weighing something like 51 kilos or 112 pounds. Trudy, who weighed easily 3 times more than Aaron, then pinned him down and Gemma stabbed Aaron fatally, twice in the neck and finally, once in the chest. The pair moved Aaron's body into a specially prepared area in the backyard covered with blue tarp, but the manner in which the women disposed of Aaron was by burying him, covering the ground with concrete, and covering the concrete with tiles. When Adrian didn't hear anything back from Aaron, she reported him missing to police. Checking phone records, they were able to retrace Aaron's steps after Adrian had dropped him off. The police were confident that Trudy Lennon would be able to at least assist with their inquiries, and on June 20th, they paid her a visit at home. The police knew something was up, so after quickly getting a search warrant, they searched the home and found Aaron's body, dozens of knives, a bone saw, scalpels, a machete, 100 litres of hydraulic acid. What the fuck? And a handwritten list of torture techniques in alphabetical order. Gemma had also put up cameras around the house, and these had recorded the moments of Aaron entering the house on June 13th, and Trudy exiting the house 30 minutes later with a large knife. In the days leading up to Aaron's demise, the women had meticulously planned on murdering someone. Whether Aaron was their intended victim during their plan can't be confirmed, but the pair were committed. Gemma had a long-term fascination with horror, murder, and serial killers, paired with her troubled background. She told friends she wanted to kill someone before she turned 25. She'd written a story online about a serial killer called SOS, and also referred to herself as that name. In order to stay in Australia, she had married someone prior to meeting Trudy, but unfortunately they passed away. Trudy, on the other hand, was a submissive in the BDSM community, going by the name Corvina. Jenna met Trudy through a mutual friend and moved into her home, helping her out financially. Trudy and Gemma quickly began sharing homicidal fantasies and conversations and online messages, building a dominant, submissive relationship, with Trudy doting obediently on Gemma. 13 days before Aaron's murder, each declared themselves ready to kill. Police reviewed security camera footage from the Bunnings in Rockingham, showing Trudy and Gemma buying large containers of hydraulic acid, which, lined up with the timing of the messages sent between each other, further verified there was premeditation. Trudy and Gemma were arrested. During police interviews, each woman accused the other of murder. Gemma said that she was sleeping when Trudy murdered Aaron, and Trudy admitted only witnessing Gemma killing Aaron and helping to conceal the crime. They were both sentenced to life in prison. On January 1st, 2018, Trudy was doused with boiling water by a fellow inmate, causing her to suffer burns to somewhere near 21% of her body in retaliation to Aaron's murder. This one's probably one of the wackiest and most famous mysteries of Australia, and while it's been covered by way more popular YouTubers than me, as well as plastered all over every gossip site, it's a case I really wanted to feature on my channel, having been to Yes and Goulburn a few times. At the time of this event, Mark and Jacob Tromp lived on a farm in Sylvan, Victoria, east of Melbourne in the Yarra Ranges, running a successful red currant farm which supplies the Woolworths and Coles, Australia's two largest supermarket chains. Their business was highly successful and always in demand, plus had strong links to the community in their region and to the greater Melbourne area. Where things start to take a turn is by what seemed like an innocent, although unexpected family trip on August 29th, 2016. Mark and Jacoba and their three adult children, Rihanna, Mitchell and Ella, got into Ella's silver Peugeot station wagon and went northbound. As it was unexpected, the business suddenly stopped and none of the family were reachable. So the next day, Ella and Rihanna visited the police station in Goulburn, New South Wales, approximately 7 hours north and in another state, to report that their parents and brother Mitchell were missing. This prompted police to visit the family home in Sylvan to investigate further, and what they discovered raised great concern. The police found all the doors of the house were unlocked, passports and all but Mitchell's mobile phones and bank cards were still inside the house. Although multiple neat piles of financial and business documents, which would typically be filed away in cabinets, were out, suggesting that someone could have been searching for something. Of all the cars on the property, all had their keys in their ignitions. While this isn't unusual for rural areas where crime is relatively low, it indicates that the trip was indeed last minute. According to Ella, Mark and Jacob still had her car because she and Rihanna had taken someone else's car while the family was at Jenolan Caves in the Blue Mountains to escape from their parents and seek help. Mitchell had left the family earlier that day, becoming fed up with his parents, who made him throw out his mobile phone out the window back in Warburton, Victoria, to prevent them from being tracked. Ella told police she would drive back to Sylvan, where she met with them later that night at the family home. She and Rihanna had gone their separate ways back in Goulburn, returning home solo. She told police that the family had gone as far as Bathurst near the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, about 800 k's or 500 miles north of Sylvan. Their parents had taken them to the nearby Jenolan Caves, and at around 7 a.m. that day, Mitchell took off. The next morning, Mitchell returned home. After leaving the family at Jenolan Caves, he'd travelled to Sydney and, after taking a series of trains, made his way back to Sylvan via Melbourne. He told police that the family had embarked on the road trip because his parents believed someone was coming to kill them for their money. Even though he thought it was ridiculous, he went along just to make sure everything was alright. But after being unable to reason with them that everything was alright and being forced to throw his phone out of the car window, he decided to return home. Mitchell and Ella both seemed to be of sound mind when questioned by police. So police searched Bathurst and at the Jenolan Caves area for the parents, but there was no trace of them. So the next day, Rihanna had resurfaced. Back in Goulburn, she had climbed into the back of Keith Whitaker's ute where she hid. According to Keith, about an hour into the drive, he felt something kick the back of his seat. When he turned around, he saw a woman lying across the floor and shat himself. He pulled over and found Rihanna in what was described as a catatonic state, stating that she didn't know her name or where she was. Keith called police and Rihanna was taken to Goulburn Hospital for observation. At this point, all 3 children had been found safe. The police now had to find Mark and Jacoba. The children and the police appealed to the public for assistance over the next few days. Meanwhile, police received a tip from a young couple in Wangaratta back in Victoria after a man driving a silver Peugeot station wagon tailgated them and drove recklessly on August 31st. When they pulled over, the driver exited that Peugeot and ran towards them, then just stopped in the middle of the road. He stared at them for a while, then turned around and walked into nearby Merrill Park. That man was later confirmed to be Mark. On September 1st, Jacoba was spotted wandering the streets of the small town of Yass in New South Wales in an agitated state. After she was found, authorities took her to a nearby hospital, but she was later transferred to Goulburn, which is larger and to be closer with daughter Rihanna. A couple of days later, on September 3rd, Mark was seen running along a street on the outskirts of Wangaratta that evening. Local police apprehended him and he was released to his family several hours later. As he was driven away in the car, he lost it and flipped off the waiting media. In the couple of days Mark was spotted in the town, there was also a series of break-ins, including at a motel, which police were investigating. Mark couldn't recall ever committing such acts, but even if he could, he probably wouldn't have admitted to it either. Ultimately, all Tromp family members were found safe and sound 5 days after they left their family home, with about 1,600 k's or 1,000 miles added to their odometers. It was one of the biggest mysteries Australia had seen, leaving everyone puzzled about what had happened. All eyes were on the Tromps. Based on what the children told police about Mark and Jacob's fears that someone was out to kill them, authorities investigated to determine if there was any credible threat against the Tromps and found none, leaving everyone to theorise why the Tromps went off the rails. So the 3 main credible theories that I think are the most likely cause. The first, they were running from debt collectors. It's certainly plausible, but according to authorities, when they investigated their financials, there was no real sign of financial instability. They had more incomings than outgoings. They could afford the debt that they had, which is why it was ruled out. The next one, a datura plant was growing near the house's water supply, slowly dropping petals into the tank. This was confirmed growing on the property. While the quantity might not have caused full delirium, it could have resulted in mild psychosis symptoms like the Tromps appear to have experienced. According to the theory, it hasn't been definitely disproven, but there are more plausible reasons for Mark and Jacoba's peculiar behaviour during this episode, which leads us to the most likely cause according to the experts, which is mental health issues may have played a significant role. Now, this is in itself a very complicated matter. Given that 3 of the 5 family members, Mark, Jacoba and Rihanna, were severely affected, this theory suggests that a buildup of stress was a key factor. In close-knit families like the Tromps, they could have experienced a psychological condition known as folie à deux, or shared delusional disorder, wherein individuals in a close relationship share a psychosis. While that's not included in the current DSM-5, there are other examples of similar instances. So in May 2008, in the case of twin sisters Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, who had no prior mental or physical health issues, Ursula ran into the path of an oncoming truck, sustaining severe injuries. Sabina then immediately did the exact same thing by stepping in front of an oncoming car. Both sisters miraculously survived with severe but non-life-threatening injuries. In July 2015, brothers Robert and Michael Beaver ended their families' lives in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, due to a shared fantasy of a mass shooting spree. According to Michael, they aimed to end the lives of 50 people. Being homeschooled, isolated within their family home, and subjected to physical and verbal misappropriation by their father likely led the brothers to snap and commit these tragic acts. And in 2018, tragedy struck the Chundawat family in Delhi, India. 10 of the 11 family members, 2 men, 6 women and 2 teenagers, were discovered hanging in the courtyard of the house. They were blindfolded and their mouths were taped shut. Their grandmother, 80-year-old Narayani, was the only one not found to be hanged, having lost her life after being strangled in another room. In the aftermath of the ordeal for the Tromps, there were a couple of crimes committed by Ella and Rihanna during these 5 days. Ella was charged on August 30th by Victorian police over the theft of a motor vehicle and possessing the proceeds of a crime. Sister Rihanna technically attempted to steal the car as well, however she was let off under Section 33 of the Mental Health Act of New South Wales, which basically dismisses her because she experienced a mental breakdown. Since this went down, the Tromps have maintained a low profile, returning back to their normal lives. And that brings us to the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts, any theories you have, or if there's anything I missed in the comments below. If you liked it, please give this a like, and consider subscribing if you like these sorts of videos. Thank you for watching, I'll see you on the next one.